Hello and welcome to another interview in our series of Meet a Columban. Today we have with us Fr Pat Colgan, who is from Northern Ireland, but as a Columban is working in Bar in Fiji. So thank you very much, Pat, for making yourself available. I know you're a very busy parish priest, just started in the job there, I believe. And so thank you for being available to us, as I said.
Thank you, Trevor, and to all our friends and supporters. It's a great privilege to be speaking with you all the way from the western part of Viti Levu, the main island of Fiji, in this busy parish of Mba on a busy on Sunday, Monday morning.
Monday morning after the busy weekend.
Yeah, yes.
But Pat, maybe just so to introduce you to those who are watching, could you give us a little bit of your background? I mentioned Northern Ireland. You grew up there, is that correct?
That's correct. I was born and bred in Belfast, a city well known for all the wrong reasons, maybe, in Australia. Grew up there in what we call the Troubles. They were pretty raging in the part of Belfast I grew up in. I went to a Christian Brothers primary school, and then the local minor seminary, I suppose, would be its name, St Malachy's College. And from there straight to the Columban Seminary in the Republic of Ireland in Navan, Dalgan Park. And that led me all the way here to Fiji.
Can I just ask you how did you pick on the Columbans? I'm sure there are plenty of other people looking around for bright young guys to bring into the priesthood.
I have a funny story about that, Trevor. That, as I said, I went to an all-boys diocesan college.
Okay.
And on the day that the Columban vocation director, who happens to be my boss here in Fiji, Father John McAvoy, on the day he came recruiting, I was the only boy not in the class listening to him. I was at a violin lesson. So God has his ways. The reason I did join the Columbans was I did have an interest always to go on missionary work. I had an aunt in the Holy Rosary Sisters in Zambia. I had two uncles who were priests, one in Portland, Oregon, and another in Chicago. And so I was hearing stories always about other countries and places. And I figured that there were plenty of priests in Belfast and in Ireland at that time. So why not go somewhere where the need perhaps was greater? So maybe all those little factors together led to me joining the Columbans. As I said, I knew really very, very little or nothing about them. It just seemed to fall into my lap. But from the moment I got there to Dalgan Park, I have to say I felt very at home, very welcomed, and that feeling has never really left me.
As you say, often the way God works in all these other little sort of incidents and things that happen to us. So yeah, that's great. So you were ordained then. Where were you ordained back home in Northern Ireland?
I was ordained there on January the 6th, 1994. And then I worked for about 6 months in a parish in Belfast, after which I left to return to Fiji. I had done 2 years here, what we call first mission assignment, as a student, learning Hindi and living out with Indian people and farming with them and getting to know their culture and their life. And so that's what I came back to as a priest in 1995. I think it was the 1st of January, 1995.
So, I mean, that's interesting. I mean, for most of us, I suppose, here in Australia, Fiji is, Fijian people. We see plenty of them on the rugby field and the rugby teams. But you have the people of Indian background also in Fiji. Could you give us a little bit of the history of that? Or do you have Indian people in your parish, or what's the situation?
We're a very heavily Indian part of Fiji here. The story is that Indians were brought here beginning in 1879, I think, by the British colonial government as sugarcane laborers, indentured workers. The same had been done in the West Indies, Mauritius, other parts of the world. The colonial government saw the need to develop the colony of Fiji, and the ethnic local Fijians weren't too interested in cutting sugarcane. They had a more subsistence lifestyle. So Indians began arriving here until about 1916, when the indenture system was abolished in the empire. So at one point in Fiji, we had 53% Indian population. They actually overtook the number of indigenous Fijians. And that unfortunately led to a number of coup d'etat, the most famous 1987, and there's been rumblings and some difficulties among the races since then, although things have improved a lot, I have to say, recently.
Right. But I suppose people from India would, they wouldn't be Catholic necessarily, would they? I mean, how did all that happen?
Well, a tiny minority coming on the boats were Catholic, and believe it or not, they kept their faith in all those adversities. The vast majority obviously were Hindu, and about 25% Muslim, and tiny numbers of Catholics, but they hung in there, and then they faced the difficulty here, I suppose, of arriving in a church with foreign priests who were from France and who only really spoke Fijian and not even English, and certainly none of the Indian languages that the indentured laborers knew, them Tamil or Telugu or Malayalam. So it's a great tribute to them that they hung on to their faith and they spread it. And in our Catholic Church now in Fiji, we would have between 5 and 10% would be Indo-Fijians, and they would be concentrated especially in a place like this. This is a sugarcane district, so their descendants are still here, and we minister to them.
Right. So you had to learn. You sort of had to learn Hindi. You were told to learn Hindi, I presume.
That's right. I did, yeah.
But you would also have to pick up some Fijian, I presume.
Oh yes, the majority of my work here in the parish now would be in the Fijian, but you do need Hindi for those who don't speak it, and also we do offer Hindi masses every month or so, and more frequently if necessary. So that's always been a priority of the Columbians in Fiji here, to learn Hindi, even though it's a more difficult language than Fijian, partly in the service of our Indian Catholics, but maybe even more importantly as to reach out to the non-Christian population here. We see that as a very important plank of our work, that of interreligious dialogue, building bridges of reconciliation, and now working together in issues of common concern, whether it be climate change or whatever other issues, poverty, COVID-19, all those things that are facing us together as a nation.
Good. Well, that's right. I mean, Fiji, how many people are we talking about in the total population? I mean, you're talking about lots of different races, yes, lots of different religions. I mean, how big is this place?
Fiji, we're just shy of 1 million. I think it's about 930,000. Wow. And at the moment, I think about 60 to 65% are ethnic Fijian. The number of Indians plunged after the series of coups. So many went to places like Sydney, Melbourne, Perth, Vancouver, Los Angeles. Many left in sad circumstances. Some chose to migrate for economic reasons. So the majority of our population has returned to being the ethnic Fijians, but we have big populations also of Rutumans, Rambians, people we call part Europeans, the descendants of the colonialists before. So it's a real, as we say here in Fiji, it's a fruit salad of cultures and languages. Fascinating place.
But, well, I know that you've recently been appointed to be the Parish Priest of Bar. So tell us a little bit about your parish and what you've sort of got to know about the place already.
Well, thank you, Trevor. Bar is not a new place for me. I had worked here as an assistant to Father David Arms, a Kiwi, about 16 years ago. So I do remember quite a number of people. But this time round, I see that it is obviously developed. The town is well known for a number of things. First of all, it's sitting right in the middle of the sugarcane belt. So we have a big mill that spews out noise and smoke 24 hours a day. But at least we know there's industry at a time when there's no tourism at all here. We're mighty glad of having the sugar industry.
Right.
It's paying our bills. So that's a big part of life. In the hinterland, which is where the majority of our parishioners live, we have 14 villages, some of them up to 2-3 hours drive inland on fairly rough roads. So that's where I would spend most of my time on Sundays. During the week, I guess I'm here in the town area looking after the Catholics in Ba. And on the weekends and other occasions, weddings, funerals, or feast days, I'm to be found in the hills or down the coast with the village people.
Yeah, yeah. I had the pleasure of visiting Bar earlier in this year, and I noticed right beside the church, you've got a very nice church there. There is a big school. Are you involved in that?
Yeah, well, I happen to be the manager of that school. And on the subject of St. Teresa's, I would like to introduce you to the headmaster there, Mr. Ronald Krishna, who's a great supporter, collaborator with the Columban work here. Good morning. I'd like to introduce you to one of our very important and special people in our parish who will explain what he does here and how his relationship with the Columbans affects his life every day.
Thank you so much. I think we are very serious about the creation season, and we are serious with the students in the school. Main thing we don't want to see rubbish around the school. So we have a clean campaign tomorrow. Following that, we have displays in the classroom so that to encourage our students to respect our creation and look after one another. And also we have a lot of lessons based on the season of creation so that the students know how important our environment is.
Thank you.
Secondary school, and all these years I've been working with the Columban fathers, and we appreciate what the Columban fathers do for us, and I'm always happy to help the Columban fathers. And I'm the head of the school at St. Teresa's, and we happy, very, very happy to be working with the Columban fathers here.
Thank you very much indeed, Master Randall. God bless you in all your efforts. So as you've heard from Ronald, he does take very seriously and enthusiastically all the things that we believe in as Columbans and our friends and supporters. Climate change, we've had a lot of cleaning up of the school and planting and gardening, and we even are thinking of turning the school and the parish perhaps part solar powered, because we have a lot of sunshine in this part of the world and this part of Fiji. So there are many others like Master Ron here, his staff, and others who are very grateful and very convinced of all that we Columbans hold dear. And that makes my work very easy.
Yeah, I must say I was very impressed by the 3 parishes that the Columbans have in Fiji. It's like there's a whole Columban history in each of those parishes. It just seems,
absolutely,
you know, the communities that are to be found out in lots of those different villages, and as well as in the towns, of course, that you mentioned.
Oh yeah, and people's memories here of the older Columban priests, those still living and those deceased, it's phenomenal. We hear stories every Sunday of Father so-and-so from Ireland and Australia and New Zealand or the United States, and especially the funny stories, how they got the words wrong, or how they slipped or fell or said something untoward. The people have great both memories and affection for the work. After Columbans have been in this parish for up to almost 70 years now. So we're very cherished and loved. And as I said, that does make my life very pleasant. And I do feel I'm standing on the shoulders of a number of giants here. People who've made a big mark, not just in the parish, but in the wider community. You may know or remember that the main reason Columbans were invited to Ba was to open a school for the sons of Indian laborers, the cane cutters. And the vast majority of those would not have been Catholic or Christian. So I just have to go to any shop in town and say I'm a Columban, and I'll be told Father McAvoy or Father Ahern taught me, and Father Keelan was my principal, and someone else was my chemistry teacher. And would you like to sit down and have a cup of tea? And
Wow.
and it's extraordinary, the doors that open because of the legacy, I suppose, of the Columbans working here all these years.
Can I just, one of the things that always intrigues me, of course, the images that we have from Australia about Fiji is what a wonderful place it is to go to for a holiday. And, you know, beautiful images that are, you know, wonderful environment, the water, etc. But then you talk about the Columban setting up a school for the people who were students who were for the Indian cane cutters, like the people
That's
who
right.
really,
That's
so there
right.
must be poverty or fairly difficult people who suffer within that kind of framework. In other words, I'm trying to say there's a contrasting picture.
Yes, Trevor, you're right. There's a big image gap between, I suppose, how Fiji likes to portray itself to attract tourists and the reality that we on the ground here see every day. It is true there are beautiful beaches and there are happy people to welcome you to the hotels, but what the tourists probably don't know is the pay that those happy-looking Fijians receive, and also I suppose the villages and the poverty and the challenges that people face on a daily basis here. I think in the last census it was reckoned that somewhere between 55 and 70% of Fijians live below the poverty line here.
Really?
It's a subsistence. People live from paycheck to paycheck. Wow. And if a paycheck doesn't come, or if people are laid off, there's a real problem. And we're seeing that now in the COVID-19 layoff. We haven't had any tourist planes in or out of here for 5 months.
Really?
And 40% of this nation depends on tourism. So we're just at the beginning of what is going to be a very difficult time. So we're kind of pulling our socks up here in the parish, trying to save costs, I suppose, and prepare ourselves for what is going to be a lean period. Right. But again, the people, they do it with such faith. They continue to give the little they have. They give so generously at Mass and other occasions. So we will get through this together. We will get through this.
I mean, yeah, the word together, that sort of strikes me. That's kind of what impressed me about my trip to Fiji too. One of the things you mentioned there, Pat, a bit earlier was there also were Muslims in the community.
That's right.
Now, could you tell us, I mean, it's not something that we normally associate from Australia. We don't associate with Fiji. But as you said, they were part of the people the Indian people who came?
Yes,
they're still part of the situation.
They would be a large minority of the Indian population here. And I have to say that I have very cordial and friendly relationships with Muslims here. In fact, one day I went down to see the person in charge of the Fiji Muslim League, just to inquire if we could bring our youth group into the Friday prayers. And immediately I was sat down and asked, was I a Columban father? And I said I was. And he told me that he owes all that he knows to the Columban priest who taught him in Xavier College here in Bath. Right. And that unfortunately at that time, he couldn't extend hospitality to our youth because we were only allowed 100 people in one place at one time, which I know is a lot more than Australia is allowing. Yeah. But now that our restrictions are lifting, I do intend to bring our youth there and work together with them. So I have to say, relationships interculturally and interreligiously are very easy here. Eh? And that's a strength, I guess, we have. We don't seem to be loaded with too much ideology here. Okay. We just, get on with living together and working together.
Okay. So what are your challenges for the coming 12 months?
What's
your strategic plan for this 12 months?
My strategic plan is to get through what's going to be a very hot summer here, I believe. And why I'm saying that, because it's already begun. Eh? Really? The weather is a big issue here in the west of Fiji. We also deal with annual flooding, which can be very severe in some of our villages, and literally people are on the roofs of houses for days and weeks, and we go down in boats and try and feed them. And So we're beginning to plan, put aside rations for what we know is going to happen.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so, and we have a hurricane season, which begins in November to April, and those cause enormous damage. So we're very vulnerable climatically here. When the weather is good, it's paradise. There's no doubt about that. But when the weather is inclement, this can be a scary place. So that, I guess, would be on my mind as we begin the summer season, which coincides with the hurricane season.
Right. Yeah, well, as we come to the end of this, Pat, I can sit and listen to stories about all this. I mean, obviously, it's very practical. You've got to plan very practical things.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
so it's quite a task. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Trevor. It's been a pleasure to share a little bit of my life here with all our friends in Australia. Please keep us in your prayers. I know that your COVID restrictions are very tight there. Thanks be to God, we haven't had a single local transmission here. If we did, we would be in big trouble because our health infrastructure is very poor. But the government has wisely closed the airport to everything. So even though, as I said, we've had it has had economic implications, but at least we're healthy and well. And we do offer our prayers to all our people in Australia who are sick or who have caught the virus and who may yet do so.
Thank you very much, Pat, and God bless.
God bless. Thanks very much, Trevor. Bye-bye.